Oh, I did.
Welcome to the weekly Yaakov class. Today is Thursday. We are the 14th of the month of Tammuz,
July.
July 10th. Thank you, David. So we were discussing last week the sins of the righteous. And not everything is the way it seems. And I want to start with the story that I ended off last week, in case you missed it. Eliezer was tired last week. There was this fellow that was going shopping for a dining room table. And you remember the story? Okay, I'll just say it quickly. He went to a very high-end store. And then everything over there was $2,000-$3,000. And then he went to the floor, the discounted room, and he saw beautiful, beautiful furniture for very, very cheap. And he asked, what's going on? Why is there such a huge price difference? Does it look like it's the same type of wood? This is the same company, same brand. Everything's the same. Why is it so marked down? And he said, look, a little scratch over here. He laughed, little scratch. You come to my house, it's going to have a scratch in 10 seconds, it's going to have a scratch. And they told him, when you're dealing with high end, every scratch counts. And the same thing is with the righteous people. When you're dealing with high end people, when you're dealing with righteous people, every single minute detail can be the worst crime possible. Moshe Rabbeinu hitting the rock instead of speaking to the rock is the only crime his entire life. Terrible punishment. You're not going to Israel. Your whole life mission gone. That's it. And the same thing is with all the other righteous people. And since we're on that topic, we began a new subtopic, which is basically going to follow a pattern. Whoever says so-and-so sinned is only making a mistake. Now, and we have a few examples of such people. Who are these people, and why would someone think that they did sin? And that is because when you look in the literal translation of the text in the prophets, when you're dealing with literal translation, you get one picture. But that's because, like I said many times, and Shalom Ber said it on the Tuesday night class many times, it's very important to remember the Torah was given with its interpretation. The Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral law, was not developed at a later time. It's a very, very big misconception. Moshe said the Torah, that's one version, and then the rabbis years later came along with a second version or a commentary or interpretation, like many people use that word. Very far from the truth. Moshe Rabbeinu got the explanation with it. Hashem, God, with his own reasoning, decided he wants it to be given as a two-package deal, one written and one oral. And it actually stayed oral for many generations. And later, when it was being forgotten, it was finally put down to paper. And that's why we have it in text today. But it originates from Mount Sinai, originates from Torah, and the stories, the way Moshe wrote them, and the interpretation, which I don't like using that word, but the explanation, the meaning of those stories came along with it.
And that is called in English, what?
Either the Talmud, either the Mishnah or the Talmud, or even the Code of Jewish Law, which is from the Talmud and the Mishnah. It all originates from Mount Sinai. Everything is not, there's no rabbis just decided to make up stories just because inspiration, just because. There's no such thing. Everything is tradition, and the tradition comes back originates from Moshe on Mount Sinai. And I'm saying this as a introduction because a lot of times you're going to hear versions of these stories, and the version that you heard is based off interpretations of regular people. And then you're going to hear this version, and you're going to be, oh, which one's correct? Who should I believe? Which one is more popular? Which one made it into Wikipedia? Which one didn't?
Who made it into a movie?
Who made it
did
into a movie or not? Oh, if it's in a movie, then it must
gotta
be
real.
gotta be real, and it
Did-
gotta be they did their research. They would never make a movie about it
Would
if
you-
it's not real, right?
I
you-
love the 11th Commandment.
Would Yul Brenner and Gina Lola Bridget alive?
Exactly. Right?
Never.
So, never. So therefore, unfortunately, and a lot of times these Wikipedia versions and the movie versions have our first impression. Unfortunately, my father-in-law says he once met a lady that came to the mitzvah tank, to the shul that he has on wheels.
He's kidnapped me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So a lady once came to him on the mitzvah tank, and she says, I was very attracted to Jews J for J because they have so many beautiful verses. Isaiah, and she starts quoting a whole bunch of different verses that they have, such beautiful verses of in their Bible, that I was so attracted to them. And it's so unfortunate that these people, they find their
Solace, yeah.
they find it in it's our Torah. It's going through their channels, and they're becoming attracted to them for our Torah. So a lot of times the first impression that we get is not from clean sources and not from true sources. And then when we hear the real version and the real story, we're like, oh, okay, this is probably not true, or this is the unjuicy, or not real, not authentic. So,
But Rabbi, the truth is always more interesting than the lies.
well, depends
You
which
know.
impression you got. Right?
Not the way I looked at it, but
Okay.
I have a
So,
question.
yes.
If you have a tzaddik like Moses, when he gets himself a blemish, as you say,
Right.
God punishes to clean your glasses.
Yeah.
What about those of us that are nothing but blemish and only have one little piece that's unblemished?
So you could actually say the opposite.
Yes.
Hashem looks for the beautiful things that a person has. And Hashem is the only one that knows how to identify and recognize the true value of a Jew. Schellenberg said it once on the Tuesday night class. I don't know if you heard that day, but a story of there was once I think it was the fifth Chabad Rabbi Schellenberg, which Schellenberg is named after, and he was giving lots of attention to non-religious Jews to try to bring them close. And he had a follower, which was a diamond dealer, a very wealthy individual, but a very righteous person. And he once came to his Rebbe and said, Rebbe, why do you spend so much time with these simple people? They're nothing special. They're like ignoramus, and they're nothing special. Why do you spend so much time with them? And he said, I can't explain to you. Whatever. And then that follower he came for Shabbos to visit. As he was leaving on Sunday, he came by his Rebbe to say goodbye. And the Rebbe said, what do you deal with, diamonds? Do you have any diamonds over here? And he says, sure. He opens up his case, and he opens up and he shows the Rebbe the diamonds. And he says, oh, this one is a very, very valuable one. The Rebbe looks at it and he says, it's a piece of glass. What's so special about this diamond? He said, no, this is worth millions. Picks it up, piece of glass. Well, and he says, Rebbe, in order to understand diamonds, you have to be a mumche. You have to be someone knowledgeable, a maven. And then the Rebbe told him, in order to understand neshama, in order to understand the soul of a Jewish people, you have to be a maven. You have to be a mumche. You asked me why I spend time with regular people. These people are special people. They have a soul. They have a true soul. They're special. So Hashem knows how to identify and look for the unblemished part of a person's soul. Okay, let's move on.
Move along.
So we're going to get to Dovber and Bathsheba very shortly, but we do have two stories beforehand. One we touched already last week, the end of last week's class. We're going to go through the stories quickly. I'm not going to be going into the text today because it's a little bit lengthy, and I want to get to the Dovber and Bathsheba story. So we're going to go through the other ones quickly. The first one was with Reuven. Reuven was Jacob's son. In the verse, when you look at the plain text in the Torah, it says that Reuven lay with or married his father's wife Bilhah, which seemed like a horrible crime of what's it called, adultery. She was married, and sounds like he did a terrible sin. So the Gemara comes and says, whoever says Reuven sinned isn't only making a mistake. And he proves it from the verse that all the sons of Yaakov or Jacob were righteous, every single one of them, even after the story that happened. So what is the true story? The Gemara explains. The true story is, we said last week, he moved his father's bed. And because he moved his father's bed, it's counted as if he got married to Bilhah, his father's wife. Now, some rabbis come and say he actually did intend to sin, but he was saved from the sin because he had protection from his righteous either ancestors or future offspring that will be coming from him, and that is what actually saved him from the sin. And that's why he didn't actually end up doing it. But he did have some intention to do it. Some other people say his sin was that he messed with the Shechina. When he moved his father's bed, he wasn't just moving a bed. It wasn't a matter of disrespecting his father. It was actually a disrespect to the Shechina, God's glory. What does that mean? The commentaries explain that, we touched on this last week, relations, intimacy of any Jew is supposed to be a very spiritual moment. It's not a very low, dirty, what people call dirty act. It's actually a very holy and spiritual act of intimacy. And it's unifying God and the Jewish people and God are considered a husband and wife. It's all metaphoric. And when a man is with his wife, this is a very uplifting and spiritual experience. Especially when we're dealing with a righteous man like Jacob. Him being with his wife by night is absolutely not for any physical pleasure or any pastime or hobby or anything like that any person might even comprehend. This is all unifying acts. This is completely godly and holy. And so the commentaries say that Yaakov Avinu had 4 beds, one ready in each tent, and he would look to see where the Shechina is, and according to where the Shechina was, the glory was, that's where he would go. I don't know if every night he would check, but we had his period of that's where he went. When he saw God's glory, that's where he was going. That's the bed that he chose. And when Reuben moved the bed of his father to come to his own mother's tent, but again, if he had a separate bed, or means he took out the other bed, I'm not sure exactly, but he was basically moving the Shechina because God's glory wanted him to be there. And you now moving your father's bed, you're actually messing now with your father, you're messing with the Shechina, God's glory. So that makes his sin even more stronger. But again, it's not what the verse says clearly that he married her. Okay, now the different rabbis in the end of this discussion discuss how close was he to sin? Did he get scared and not do it, or did he not even have the idea? How close did he get to the sin?
That he was angry, and when you're angry, you don't think.
Okay, possible. Either way, everyone agrees that, or almost everybody agrees that he didn't do the sin that says in the Torah. We're moving now to the next story. Okay, so the first story was with Reuben, is that how he's called? Reuben, the son of Jacob. Now we're moving on to the next story. The next story is about the Bnei Eli, the children of Eli. Eli was the high priest, the Kohen, after the story of Shimshon, the story of Samson. Samson, the strong guy, long hair. So after he passed away, after he was killed in the famous story with the Plishtim, the next leader over the world Jewry was the high priest, whose name was Eli HaKohen. And Eli was a leader, and he had 2 sons. One of them's name was Hophni, and the second son was called Pinchas. Now, these two sons, Hophni and Pinchas, the verse tells us that they sinned, and they did not go in the way of their father, and their father Eli did not stop them. He did not give them enough rebuke, and he did in the end call them to try to stop, but it was already too late. They were already into what they were doing, and God got very angry at Eli for the sins of his children, and then he sent the prophet Shmuel, a young boy, to give Samuel to give the prophet. His first prophecy was saying the downfall, what's going to happen to Eli's family. Very sad, a little boy, 4 years old, getting a prophecy, telling his teacher that's raising him that he's gonna.
I gotta go.
Your whole family is gonna get punished, and you're from a lot of curses. A very interesting story. So, what did the sons of Eli do? So I'm going to read to you from inside the Navi. This is the Navi Samuel, what the literal text says, and then we're going to go and explain what it means, what they actually did. So it says, B'nai Eli, the sons of Eli, B'nai Blial, were very wicked sons. Lo yadu es Hashem, they did not know God. Next verse. They had this rule that anytime a person would come to bring a sacrifice, one of these priests would come as the meat was cooking, and he would have a big fork that had 3 prongs in his end. And then he would say, now usually there's certain parts of every sacrifice that have to go to the Kohen. They didn't like that version. They would take this big fork, stick it into the pot, and say, whatever the fork grabs is for me.
Aim for the tenderloin.
And whatever the fork picks up, I get. And this is not the law. The law is certain parts you're supposed to get.
Sounds like,
Sometimes they would even come before they brought the parts on the Mizbeach, before Hashem got his portions of the sacrifice. They would come and take part of the sacrifice before Hashem got. And they would say, we want it raw. So we don't want you to first burn part of it. We want to get it the way it is. And then the person would plead and say, let me first give God his piece, and then I'll give you. And they say, no. We're taking now. If you're not going to give us, we're going to take it. And then the verse continues and says
that they raped the korban.
Then the verse tells us that the sins of these young children were not young children, young lads, was great, and they got Hashem angry and the people angry. Okay. Then it says Eli heard what his sons were doing, and he said, why are you guys doing what you're doing? It's not good when I hear what you're doing. Please don't do it. You're sinning against God. And it says they didn't listen to them. Then okay, now the verse then says a little earlier, actually, I started a little too late. A little earlier, the verse tells us that the sons of Eli where is it? Oh, here. The sons of Eli, it says, Asher yishkevun es ha'anoshim. They used to lay with the women that would come to the temple. This sounds like a very severe. That's what it says. So it sounds, of course, this thing. These were married women. These were married women that were coming to bring sacrifices after either having a child, you have to bring a sacrifice, or after being unclean, you have to come when you finish the period of cycle, you have to come bring a sacrifice, and then you could go back to your husband. So and it says they used to lay with the woman. That's what it says. And usually when it says lay with the woman, it means marry. So
I thought I was rotten.
So again, this sounds like very severe sins. Comes Rabbi Shmuel and he says, the name of Rabbi Yonasan, whoever says that the sons of Eli sinned is making a mistake. So, how do we reconcile? How do we explain this? I don't know how I'm gonna get to school if I have to take extra kid. Okay. Okay. So Rav, we're gonna break it up by piece. First of all, Rav, a great rabbi, says Pinchas was one of the two sons. He himself did not sin. Only Chafni was the one that was sinning. Pinchas himself didn't sin. Okay, that's one. If Pinchas didn't sin, also Chafni didn't sin. Why not? Because the verse says the two sons of Eli, Chafni and Pinchas, were both priests for Hashem. The verse puts them together. That means they're equal. Just like Pinchas didn't sin, also Chafni didn't sin. How do you explain where it says that they laid with the woman? What does it mean they laid with the woman if they didn't sin? So what is the true story? The true story is that they used to delay the sacrifices of the woman. They used to delay their sacrifices. What happened because they delayed the sacrifices? They were not in a rush. They used to take their time, and women would come and say, "We want to bring our sacrifice." They'd say, "Oh, come, we'll take care of it. You could leave it here, and we'll take care of it for you." They're like, "No, we want to see." They'd be like, "Okay, you want to see? Wait," and they would take their time. And what happens to the woman? A woman that's going to have to wait for a sacrifice to be brought is going to have to stay overnight because they're making her wait. So she ends up staying in the Mishkan, where the temple, wherever it was at that point, and she doesn't end up going home that night. She doesn't end up going home that night. Her husband's at home, waited already a long time for her to be clean, and when he's not coming, he might not be able to control himself. So they, by delaying the woman, I just play on words. By delaying the woman, it's like they laid with the woman.
Right.
But they didn't actually lay with them. They just delayed them. It's no pun intended. But it works out. It works out. Okay. How do we know that they actually were righteous? So the Gemara brings different verses that shows how special they were, that they brought their special sacrifices, and it must be that they were on a high level. So the sin with the taking the food, that was a sin. That is a sin. But the sin of that they laid with the woman, that is not, that part didn't happen. Okay.
Assuming, of course, they didn't.
Well, this is that's what we gave in the introduction. The true version of the Torah text is more reliable than Wikipedia.
Wikipedia's never been reliable. Wikipedia.
Oh, whatever. Okay,
That's the new god, you know.
The next story that we have of the ones that seems like they sinned is also in the book of Samuel, the book of Shmuel, regarding Samuel's own sons. The verse tells us that when Samuel became old, his sons did not go in his way, and they went after the money. Now that sounds like they accepted bribes. That they went after the bribes. They went after the money.
Only in those days, right?
So the Gemara says no. They actually were very righteous, and they didn't accept money from anyone. And what does it mean? They didn't go in his father's ways, and they went after the money. Shmuel had a custom that he was a traveling rabbi, traveling judge, and he would go from town to town, settling any disputes and taking care of any fights and judging everyone and helping everybody as much as possible. And that's what he did as a custom. He was a traveling rabbi. That's what he did. All the time he traveled around. His sons did not travel around. His sons, they stayed in the city where they lived. And they said, anyone who has any cases has to come here. What was the reasoning? What was the reasoning that the sons stayed local? Is because they had their own clerks and their own scribes and their own,
business.
what's it called in the court that you have people that type up
Stenographer.
stenographer,
Typewriters.
they have their own people people that they work with, and they get paid, right? They have a job.
Yeah.
If he would be a traveling rabbi, every city that he comes to, they would have to find a scribe over there and find a typing guy over there and the people that's going to record it and people that's going to announce it. So they wanted to benefit their own private staff, if you want to call it, their own staff, and that's why they stayed local. And because of that, that's what it means they went after the money. But they themselves didn't really sin. I mean, that was their sin. But they didn't go in the Father's way by traveling around. Other opinions is that what does it mean that they went after the money? Different opinions. They went after the money means that they were Leviim. Shmuel was a Levi. And a Levi gets Meiser. What's a Meiser in English? Tithing.
A tithe.
Tithe, right?
10%.
Now, a Levi is not supposed to ask for the tithe. You can't say, give me. Someone gives you get it. Their problem was that they went to ask for it. And people would give them because they were the judges. So people knew. So it's not bribery, but it's some type of bribery. So therefore, that's what it means when it says that they went after the money. They did this kind of bribe. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda says their sin that they did wrong was people that used to come to do business with them, people that used to come for court cases, they would have investments with these people. They had business dealings with them, besides what the court case was. But because they were judging people that they had investments with, so it could affect their judgment. So that's again considered a type of bribery. Rabbi Akiva says they would take a little bit extra from tithing, more than they was coming to them. And Rabbi says they would take things which really belong to a Kohen, they would take it for themselves, really, and as Levium, they would take things that belong to Kohen. So these were this quote unquote sins of the sons of Samuel, of Shmuel. Okay? But we started off again with the statement. We're on a pattern over here, different famous people. It seems like they sinned, but here we are not whitewashing their sins. We are clarifying what really happened. And now we're moving on to the story of
Feel free
King.
to cloud my story.
When I get to your page.
Bathsheba.
Now we're getting to David.
Wait. What was that thing you called the radiance of the Spirit of God, and then the
Shechina.
Shechina. Yes, I've seen a lot of those that told me to.
Okay, so now we're moving to the story of David. Not this David. King David.
The good, yeah, not this David. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Don't ask why I'm not here anymore.
Oh, just disappeared.
Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yona's son. Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Nachmani, said in the name of Rabbi Yona's son, Kol ha'omer David chata. Whoever says King David sinned, Einoi elata is making a mistake. Shenemar says in the verse, tells us, this is after the story of Bathsheba. This verse tells us, David l'chol drach of maskil. Whatever David did, he was successful. V'Hashem imoy, and God was with him. You think that if he did such a terrible sin, the way the verse tells us that he did a sin, the Shechina, God would still be with him? Obviously, if God was with him and he was successful, whatever he did, he didn't sin. If he would sin such a terrible sin, he wouldn't have God with him just like that. So if David didn't sin, what is the meaning of all these verses? One verse says, why did you embarrass the word of Hashem to do evil? Since you did evil. Clarification, explanation, interpretation. Shebikesh lashes. He actually wanted to do something bad, but in the end, he didn't end up doing something bad. Rabbi said, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rabbi Yehuda the prince, he was a descendant of King David. And back then, time of David, people were always speaking negative about him. And until today, people that they like the juicy stuff and they like to gossip. So they like taking this topic. Certain people, they light up when they hear certain topic. Oh, David and Bathsheba. That becomes like a hot topic for them. They get all excited. Yeah. So back in Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's time, people used to do that as well. And he was offended because he was a descendant.
Human nature.
Right? So he was a descendant of King David. So he was proving from the verses in the Schus of David. And he explained, when the verse says, why did you embarrass the word of Hashem to do evil? Rabbi said that this word, the way it's written in the Torah, in the prophet, is different the way anywhere else it says evil in the whole Bible. Usually it says vayas, he did evil. He did evil. In this verse, it doesn't say and he did evil. This verse says la'asois hara. Now, la'asois means to do, but it's a different term that is always used. Whenever the Torah is going to change and say always one style of word, and then one case it says it differently, that one case has an interpretation. It's coming to teach you. Why does it say this word differently? To teach us something. What is it teaching us? La'asois, that he wanted to do something bad, but in the end, he didn't end up doing the bad thing. Now, before we move on, I want to go and say the story, what happened. I'm going to read it from inside the Navi, the way it's written here, and then we're going to go and explain it. Okay? And anything you saw in any movies or any books is for sure not true.
Wiki.
I wish they made a movie about
They do.
Out of the mouth.
Yeah,
So,
but don't watch the
They
movies,
did Sodom and
non-Jewish
Gomorrah,
ones.
they did
Because it's not
David
going to
and
have
Bathsheba.
Jews.
It also ruins your imagination.
That's what I told him before. First impressions. Okay, so it says, here's the story. David had sent his general Yoav and his servants to go for a war with the country of Ammon.
Yemen.
No,
No.
Ammon?
Ammon.
Are you talking back? They called it Ammonite.
Ammonites, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
The
David
second
himself,
daughter of,
Yoshev B'Yerushalayim, he stayed in Jerusalem at
Stayed
that
home.
time. At that night, King David got up from his bed in the middle of the night, and he went on his roof. He went on his roof, and from the viewpoint on his roof, he saw a woman
Mm-hmm.
washing herself. Isha Rechetzes. He saw a woman washing herself, and she was very beautiful. David sent, and he asked, who's that woman? And they said, this is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah Hittite. Okay.
Soon to be dead.
So David sent messengers, bring her. She came to him. He was with her. She was pure. She wasn't tameh at that time. She had just come out
Out of the
at the mikvah, so she was pure. And he spent time with her, and then she went back home.
And Uriah say,
wait. Let's finish the story. A while later, I'm guessing a few weeks go by, she becomes pregnant. She sends a message to David saying, I'm pregnant. Now, David now fears a terrible Chil Hashem.
punishment.
Now.
What's going to happen? What?
Now.
Well,
Hey.
maybe he thought
He was in the glow
he's
of
going to
it.
get away with it. No one's going to know about it. But now it's a problem because she is going to be in trouble now. She's going to become pregnant. And what is she supposed to do? People are going to start telling her, your husband's in the war for the last few months. How all of a sudden did you become
It's a
Pregnant.
miracle.
So now
But it
David's
worked for
scared.
Christians.
Now David's scared that the story's going to get. David's scared the story's going to get out. David's scared the story's going to get out.
The prequel to
He's not worried about himself, really. He's worried about the Chil Hashem.
Reputation?
Chil Hashem, it's going to happen. He's representing God. He's representing God's nation. And if people talk bad about him, it's going to be a disgrace for God also. That's what he was worried about. His own personal thing. So he has a backup plan. What's the backup plan?
Bring him back from war.
Call Uriah.
You're right.
Vayishlach David al Yoav. He sends Yoav, the general, send Uriah back home. Send him to come to me. So he comes to David. David says, how's it going? How's the war doing? How's everyone doing?
And he spoils.
And he gives him a report. And then David tells him, Vayimer David l'Uriah, I want you right now to go home, wash yourself, and spend time at home. Making it pretty clear, I want you to go
Pokey.
with your wife. Uriah leaves, and he decides to disobey the king. And he goes to sleep that night amongst the king's guards in the palace. Doesn't go home.
Why would he do that?
He disobeyed the king.
Then he dies.
David had some scouts, and they come to David and say, Uriah disobeyed you. He didn't go home. Now, why did David want Uriah to go home?
So then
This way, everyone knows Uriah came home for a visit, and then
Did
when
the deed and
when she's
pregnant.
when everyone starts telling that the woman could tell she's pregnant before anyone else, right? After another 2 months go by, people start noticing that she's pregnant. They're gonna say, "Oh, now Uriah came back 2 months ago. Oh, now we know what happened," right? People are gonna talk like that, and this was gonna save.
Or they won't talk.
This is gonna
think about it. Though.
This is gonna save the terrible Chilul Hashem. But he didn't go home, and David finds out that he didn't go home.
Why would he not?
So he calls him back and he says, "Why didn't you go home? I told you to go home." And here Uriah says something very, very disrespectful. He says to the king, he says, "How could I go home? The Jewish nation right now and the Aron, the Ark, and all my fellow soldiers are sitting now they're right now active by an active war. My master Yoav was his general, and all the servants of my master are all by a war. How could I go home to eat and drink and be with my wife? Never. I swear, I'm not going home." No, this was very disrespectful to speak like that to a king. Number one, the king telling you to do something, you have to listen. Number two, to swear that you're not going to listen to the king. How do you do something like that? And number three, the biggest disrespect is that he called Yoav, which was the king's general, my master. To call your general with the name master in front of the king, and David already had a few run-ins with Yoav, and it was no public knowledge that they weren't friendly, even though they were first cousins, but they weren't friendly, and a few times Yoav had clashes with David. To call Yoav my master in front of David is completely rebellious, and because it's rebellious, it's also punishable by death.
Oh, so he sent him.
But David decided to give him one more chance before he put him to death, and he says, "I want you to stay overnight, and I'll send you back to the war tomorrow, but I want you to go home now. Go home." And again, he didn't go home. So when David sees that he's not going home, he says, "Okay, come over here. I gotta give you a letter to send to Yoav." In the letter, he writes to Yoav, "Please put Uriah at the front lines
In the suicide
in a
squad.
suicide squad in a place that he should die." And sure enough, when he got that letter, he did it. He put him in a suicidal spot next to a wall, next to the wall of the city. It was very easy for them to kill him. And he then sends a report back to the king what happened. Okay, I'm going to jump a little bit. The next chapter, chapter 12, starts off as follows. God sends... Oh, 1 second. After
He gets killed.
he was killed, David brought her at home and got married to her, and child was born. And the verse ends off. This thing was what David did was very bad in the eyes of Hashem. Chapter 12, God sends Natan, prophet Natan, he's not here today, sends him to David, and he says, I have a story for you. What's the story? He says there was two men in one city. One was rich, one was poor. The rich guy had lots of sheep, lots of cattle, and the poor guy had nothing. He just had one little sheep. And he lived with the sheep and was in his house, and he's part of like a pet. He ate from his bread and he drank from his cups, and he was like a daughter. One day, a traveling guy is going by the city, and he visits the rich man's house. He's like, "Do you have some food for me?" So the rich man says, "Sure. Come inside." Brings him into his house, and he says, I'll go prepare some food for you." This rich guy goes to the poor guy's house, takes the only sheep that the guy has, and he slaughters it and prepares food for his guests. He didn't want to take from his own. King David hears the story, gets very angry. He thought it was a real story. And he says, what? Such an evil thing for such a person to do? That guy deserves to die. Such a wicked thing.
What did he do again?
This rich person had plenty of food, and he steals a poor man's sheep if he doesn't want to take his own. So he says this guy deserves to die. He should pay back before you kill him. Pay back 4 times whatever to the poor guy. Let him pay four times whatever he took. The prophet Natan tells the king, "That's you. This was just a story about yourself. Hashem sent me to tell you, I appointed you to be a king. I saved you from the hands of Shaul. I gave you a house to be a kingdom. I gave you many wives. I gave you to be in charge of all the Jewish people. And if it wasn't enough for you, I could have given you more and more and more." And here comes the verse that we mentioned before. Why have you embarrassed the words of Hashem to do evil in his eyes? You took Uriah, you killed him, and his wife you took for yourself. Him you killed by the sword of Bnei Ammon. And then he gives a list of punishments, what's going to happen. Your son's going to die, and you can get many punishments. This is the story, the way it's written. Comes Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani and says, whoever says David sinned is only making a mistake.
Elaborate.
When it says that he did bad, he wanted to do bad. But but he didn't end up doing it. He wanted to do bad, but he didn't end up doing it. It says you killed him. No. It doesn't mean he killed. He did kill him, but he was liable to be killed because he was rebellious against the king. What was the sin? Why does the Torah count it as killing? Because he should have done it. He had to do it the correct way. The correct way is to go through the Sanhedrin, the court, and try him. You try him for rebelling against the king, and then you put him to death. He put him to death. It says you took his wife. He said he took his wife. How do you explain that? He lived with a married woman. How do you explain that? He says clearly he lived with her, and he did. She became pregnant. Last time we said didn't mean that he actually lived. It means he changed the bed, or it didn't mean that he lived. It means they delayed. Here she became pregnant.
It's a miracle.
So how do you explain the sin? So I'm going to tell you what the Gemara answers, but I want to give you a little bit what the Medrash says, something that happened behind the scenes. This doesn't say I don't know if it's on the Gemara, but it's from the Medrash. In the prayers we say every day, we start off the Amidah prayer, saying, mentioning the forefathers, Elkei Avram, Elkei Yitzchak, Elkei Yaakov. And we end off the first verse, Magen Avram, the shield of Avram. King David asked Hashem that because I reached such a high level, maybe it would be appropriate also to stick my name, not coming from a place of gaiva, but a real tzaddik is no gaiva. But maybe I could be included in this verse also.
Maybe a face on Mount Rushmore.
like to put Trump, right? Shh, shh, shh. Right? So God tells King David, all these three were tested. They had very big tests throughout their lifetimes, and they all passed the test. Abraham had many tests. Isaac was ready to be put in the Akedah. Jacob had many tests, went through many challenges and many different difficulties, and they passed all these tests. That's what makes them so special. You were never tested, so you're not on that. You are a special person,
You're a
but you're
wonderful
not on
guy,
that.
but
You're not on that caliber. So David says, "So test me." He says, "You sure you want to be tested?"
But we already discussed it.
And she,
When people ask to be tested, you know, remember we did that a
We
long
did,
time
sure.
ago.
You're not supposed to. We actually
The
pray every
rabbi-
morning.
Rabbi was asking to be tested, you know. And
Right, you're not supposed to. But
okay,
David asked.
I was tested and failed every one of them.
So David says, "Hashem, test me." Hashem said, "Okay, you want to be tested? Okay, I'm gonna." Now King David had by that point already removed his Yetzer Hara. He worked very hard to destroy his evil inclination, but now he asked for it. Hashem gave this Yetzer Hara power, and Yetzer Hara is the one that caused him to go onto the roof for fresh air, and to orchestrated this whole scene that he's going to be standing in. Just at that moment, he's going to be the curtain's going to blow, and he's going to have to get a perfect view into a woman bathing, and he's going to have now a desire for it. And that was just introduction. King David also had prophetic vision, Ruach HaKodesh, that he is destined to marry this woman, which is true. Solomon, which everyone knows that Solomon is the one that's going to build the temple, was the son of David and Bathsheba. So it was obviously destined that they were supposed to marry. And King David knew that. So when he asked who's that woman and found out that that is his future wife, and he got the name,
Baby.
he's like, what? That's my future wife. How is she married? How is she married? She's not supposed to be married to someone else now. She's destined to be my wife. What you doing? Now, really, what he should have done is, should have waited. Should have trusted his prophecy and say, okay, maybe he's going to pass away. Maybe they're going to get divorced. But his Yetzer Hara, his evil inclination that he had, pushed him to take her now. That's what he was ready to sin. That's what it means he was ready to sin.
no one locked the door.
When he said, bring her now,
Oh,
in his mind, he was going to sin. We'll find out soon what really happened. But in his mind at that point, he was ready to sin. Why was he ready to sin? And again, this is my future wife. I want her now. And this was the Yetzer Hara, his evil inclination, that he wanted to be tested by Hashem, getting the better of him.
so he asked for it.
He asked for it, and
He got it.
he failed. Now, how is it that he didn't sin? King David had a rule. And at that point, when he was ready to sin, he didn't think about this rule. He only found out about it afterwards. Meaning he only realized about it afterwards. That he instituted a rule that any soldier that goes out to the war of King David, all of King David's soldiers, when they were married, they had to write a bill of divorce, a get, a full 100% get to their wife.
One time.
Divorce their wives. Why? For two reasons. A few
In
reasons.
case they're not found.
Number one, in case he gets lost and we don't know what happens to her and to him, his wife won't remain bound to him. His wife will be able to marry someone else. Also, if they didn't have any children, usually you have something to do called chalitza. You have to marry your brother-in-law. Not always people like to marry their brothers-in-law. If they're divorced, you don't have to marry your, the chalitza. You don't have to do to marry your brother-in-law. And also helps for inheritance purposes. There's other benefits that are involved in writing a bill of divorce, as opposed to just dying by war. So David had this rule that anyone that goes to war has to write a bill of divorce. When you come back, you rip up the bill of divorce and you get married again. That was the rule.
However,
Now,
I would like-
so when David called her to come to him. She technically at that point was divorced. Now, it was still considered a very bad thing what he did. Why? Because it was common knowledge that that bill of divorce is dependent on the person dying by war or not. And at that point, at least, he was not dead. He was going to be killed, but that wasn't even part of the
wasn't
plan.
dead yet.
But that wasn't part of the plan. So what David did was wrong and considered a sin, and that's why he clearly says, "Chatasi, I sinned," but not the sin that people think that he did. He didn't do adultery because she was divorced at that point. And the fact that he set him up to die is all that was not a murderer. That was he didn't do it the right way. He should have had him tried. It ended up becoming a big disgrace of Hashem's name. Because people did end up finding out the story.
As people usually do.
No. He thought it was a legal technicality. He could get away with it, and
Yes,
people
It's actually
found
not.
out.
That's not what we're saying. Actually, he actually did not think of that legal technicality. He, in his mind, thought he was doing a sin. Only afterwards he realized that God protected him, because that God does to the righteous people, and protected him from sinning. So he didn't end up sinning.
Yeah. So how do I get that kind of insurance?
You have to be very righteous.
Go to war.
Okay, it's a little more, but I'm just going to say how the news spilled out. The news spilled out from the general, that troublemaker general. They did many things against David. His name is Yaakov. People complained to him by the war and said, "Why did you put Uriah by a dangerous spot? Don't you realize that's such a dangerous spot? How do you do such a?" People were complaining. You did a stupid move.
So they realized
And-
that they could use this incident.
and
to
then-
save it.
Yaakov, the general, did something really, really bad. He showed them the note.
You what?
He showed them the note.
Oh,
He said, "I was
Goodness,
just
The
following.
orders.
I was just following orders." And then people started saying, "Oh," because they found out a few weeks later. Everyone found out King married a new woman, and then the soldiers at the war came back and told people the story. Oh, this interesting thing. All of a sudden, Yoav got his note to kill him, and then he goes takes his wife. That's the sin that went out, and that became famous. That part. So it ended up becoming a big Chil Hashem. Anyways, but it's not the adultery. That's the famous version. That's not really what happened. Okay, we went a little bit over time, and we're gonna stop here, and